do that. So it's lovely to see everyone. It's been such a long time. It's been about 5 weeks, 6 weeks. So good to see you. Do find yourself in an easy upright position with your legs crossed in Sukhasana. Make sure you've got some padding underneath your sit bones, just so the knees can drop away from the hip points. And that just means that we can free up the spine. So that's really important. Otherwise, we kind of come into a slumpasana flexion. So we want to intend to create as much space as possible. So today's session will be working towards creating a certain amount of digestive fire with our attention situated around the solar plexus, so Manipura chakra. So it's quite an interesting one because we'll be working with lateral extension movements, as well as some interesting exhalations with some punches in Warrior One. And the reason for that is to get the energy circulating around the breast area, which is obviously very necessary and very good for us, and under the armpits. So we avoid any blockages. Let me just let Ella in. And we'll be working with Kapalabhati, which is a forced exhalation. So we'll come into some breath awareness, so we know what's going on with our breath before we come into a forced exhalation, and some side angle and side plank. All of that is modified, all of it is staged, and all of it is to be taken at your own pace. So just bringing your attention in, imagining that our attention and our senses are very much like the tortoise limbs, and we're drawing them in, beginning to notice how we are today, cultivating a weather report. So you might like to gently gaze down in front of you, in front of the mats, softening around the eye sockets, softening around the jaw, beginning to notice where your breath is, noticing how your shoulders are. Are your shoulders tense? Just notice how they are, roll them back and allow for some space to take place. Notice your sit bones grounding down through whatever you're sitting on. And begin to breathe deeply through the nostrils. So we begin to move into nasal breathing. And as we begin to notice how we're breathing, we're going to start to move with the breath. So on your exhalation, I'd like you to think about dropping the forehead down and forwards, relaxing the forehead, relaxing the back of the neck. Inhaling, drawing yourself into an extension, drawing the shoulder blades together, really utilizing the rhomboids there. Exhale, coming into flexion. You may notice as you rock backwards and forwards here that you allow for this movement to roll into the pelvis if there's enough space whilst you're in a seated position. Exhaling and actually inhaling as you move forwards, exhaling as you draw back. Now the reason for that, as we inhale, the diaphragm flattens down and away. As we exhale and draw ourselves backwards into flexion, the diaphragm arches and we create more space for the spine to move. So we're really utilizing the respiratory diaphragm as well as this spinal movement. We're now going to take this into some circles, known as grist the mill. And as we circle here, allow for the spine to flex and allow for the spine to extend. Let me just fiddle around with mutes. So spiraling in through the pelvis, and you might feel this within the pelvis. There may be some restriction there, or maybe you can feel the spirals moving all the way up through the lumbar, the thoracic, and the clavicular spine, maybe taking this into the top of the head. So it's that root known as where the Kundalini Shakti rises up. And we're freeing that spine up for the energy to rise and descend. And then coming back in the opposite direction, noticing any areas that feel gristly or clicky. And draw yourself into an upright position. We're going to inhale the arms up and overhead. And exhale through the thoracic, the midsection of the spine, fixing the lumbar as we rotate to the left-hand side. Inhaling, grounding down through sitting bones. Exhale to find a little bit more rotation. Inhale, allow for the belly to expand to the outer edge. Exhale, allow for belly to draw in. If that doesn't make sense to you, when you inhale, let the belly stick out. Push it out. As you exhale, allow for belly to draw in. Now, the more we practice breathing in this way, the easier it becomes. Inhale, lifting up through the side body. Exhale over to the other side, keeping the lumbar fixed. Inhale, grounding down through the sit bones, lifting up through each vertebra. Exhale and rotate, gazing down at the floor behind you. Inhale, billowing outwards from belly. Exhale, drawing inwards. Inhale, lifting the arms up and overhead. Exhale, pad the hands forwards, coming down onto hands, elbows, maybe creating a little cushion for yourself, resting the forehead down, using any props to modify, feeling into the hip space here, breathing. How do the hips feel? And then creeping the hands back towards the shins. We're going to flip the legs over, coming into the opposing cross and come into your forward fold on this side. Just noticing how the hips are. Maybe you can feel something, maybe not. There is no right or wrong answer here. Just opening up the spaces to allow for that pranic flow to take place. And then creeping the hands back towards center. We're going to come into a lateral extension. So we're going to inhale the right arm up above the head. Thinking about the space between the sit bone, the armpit, and the middle finger. So we're waking up the hand here. With that sense of grounding through sit bones, we're going to pivot over to the side, opening up the intercostal muscles in between the rib cage. And then perhaps there'll be an area that feels like you need to work into that space where you can spiral the heart or the breastbone up towards the ceiling, gazing softly towards the ceiling or the sky, depending on where you are. Lovely. And we're going to exhale, spiral the arm, moving into the shoulder. Inhaling, bringing the arm behind us. Exhale, sweeping that arm around. Allow for this movement to come in. Again, we're allowing for that free flow of energy around the breast tissue, which is really key. And then inhaling, creep that hand back down. Inhale, lifting up through that sit bone, or rather through the armpit and the middle finger, keeping the sit bone grounded. And exhale, opening up along the intercostal muscles in between the rib cage. Now, where do you feel it here? I feel it lower down on the side seam, but for you it may feel different. And then spiral the breastbone up towards the ceiling. So you've got a lateral extension as well as a rotation taking place. Just notice how that is without collapsing into the right hand. The soft gaze, reaching through the middle finger. And we're going to sweep that arm down, releasing into the shoulder, creating some movement under the armpits. Inhaling and exhaling through the nostrils. And on the next inhalation, lifting up and through and coming back to neutral. So we're going to come into Ardha Matsyendrasana, folding the left leg in underneath buttock, right leg comes over. So we make sure that there are 4 points of contact with the foot here. If that's not feasible, bring the foot in front, make sure the sit bones are equal. Part of the reason why we use padding is to allow for all of this to take place without so much movement. Grounding down through the sit bones, lengthening up through the spine. We spiral on the exhalation, wrapping the hand around the back of the knee, or pivoting with the elbow. Half Lord of the Fishes. Inhaling, allowing for the belly to expand. Exhale, notice that sense of drawing inwards as you perhaps can spiral around. And you'll notice there's this lovely kind of squishing of the abdominal organs from the rotation, allowing for fresh, new flow of blood to come in around there. Inhaling, allowing for the belly to expand. Exhale, slightly more rotation. Inhale, coming through the center, we're coming into an open twist now. Again, positioning the hand on the outside of the knee, or bringing it into a sense of feedback with the elbow, waving to whoever's in the space with you, and waving to my sofa. Inhaling, allowing for belly to open and expand. Exhale with a sense of drawing inwards. Inhale, feeling that lovely long length. Exhale. Lovely. Now spiraling on the inhale to come back through, you can unravel yourself by straightening the lower leg and then straightening the right leg, bending the left and then threading the right underneath and through. So the foot's just underneath the buttock and you either have the foot in front of the buttock or over the other side, depending on your anatomy. Make sure the sit bones are grounded. Inhale, rooting up, lifting up through the vertebra. Exhale, rotate into your closed twist, finding the position of the hand. Either bringing the elbow to the outer knee or wrapping the hand around. Inhale, lifting up through the vertebra. Exhale, softly gazing behind you, perhaps, or to the side of you. Inhale, belly billows. Exhale, belly draws in. Inhale and soften on the exhalation. Inhaling through your neutral, spiraling to the other side into your open twist, finding position that works for you with your elbow or your arm at your knee. Inhale, make sure the foot is making contact with the ground. Exhale and spiral, remembering to fix the lumbar. So this rotation comes through the thoracic. Inhale, allow for belly to billow outwards. Exhale, find rotation. Inhale, coming back down and through your neutral. We're now going to prepare for Kapalabhati. So we don't normally practice this in the evening. So let's see how this goes. We have we have some time to play with it. So you can either be in a cross-legged position or a kneeling position. Kapalabhati, in terms of this pranayama, is quite a strong exhalation. When we do a forced and strong exhalation, the abdominal region pumps inwards. Okay. On the inhalation, which isn't necessarily a focus, the inhalation is a release, the diaphragm draws down, the belly relaxes, that's the tricky bit, and then we pump again, like this. So I'm going to demonstrate. The contraindications are, just to remind everyone, anything like pregnancy, high blood pressure, menstruation, glaucoma, just a few of those things. If you're menstruating, you might just want to do this very gently. So I'm going to demonstrate for you. You can practice alongside me if you're familiar. I'm going to bring my hands to the navel region in a yoni mudra with the thumb and the fingers together. We'll just do 10 for demonstration, then we'll move into our rounds. So we inhale freely and exhale, pump. Inhale, allow that to come in quite naturally, and exhale. After the exhalation, a long inhalation comes in and you release the effort. Okay, now if you find that there's a building up of energy into the chest and the shoulders, it's probably the case that you're a clavicular breather, which means we're holding the belly in and not allowing it to soften for the diaphragm to move in, and it's an anxiety breath. And sometimes this can increase that sense of anxiety. So if that is you, if you're someone who does come into a panic attack type state, you want to focus on release of the abdominal region. So we're going to do 3 rounds of either 10 to 20 of these breaths. If you get lost and it takes some time to build up strength around the abdomen, just do as many as you can, notice how you feel, and then come back to it. Because if you haven't done this before, it can be very tricky to kind of touch into. It doesn't come automatically. So let's begin by breathing through the nostrils, relaxing the shoulders, relaxing the jaw and the abdomen. Inhaling, exhaling, and after the next inhalation, coming to your 10 or 20, releasing the breath, just noticing how that feels. Maybe the case that it feels dry in the back of the throat. Give yourself an opportunity to relax the breath. And then begin again, inhaling naturally and begin to pump. lost the pump, just come back to your normal breath, wherever you are with it. Release the belly. If you're holding anything, just release that. And we'll come to one more round. And I'm just going to sit here and observe my breath because of my little coughing fit. Come into your 10 or 20 Kapalabhati, remembering that there's a forced exhalation and you soften the belly. Diaphragm draws down, you inhale slightly. If you don't get that sense of the diaphragm drawing down, you tend to come into a hyperventilation, which is useful in some respects, but not what we're looking for today. So coming into your pumping, I can talk you through if you're not already doing it. Inhaling naturally, exhaling, inhaling, and pump. Relaxing the diaphragm. Diaphragm flattens down, lung cavity opens, breath comes in. And just notice as you bring the tops of the hands to the thighs, if there's any change that has taken place with that pranayama. Whatever you were doing there, just notice if there's change, as we're always experiencing change. And for some of you, there may be more tension in the shoulders. For some of you, there may be a sense of clarity around the front of the forehead. That's why it's called skull shining breath. You get this sense of cleaning the perspective or cleaning the window of our mind. And just notice how that is for you without judgment, okay? So we're going to come onto all fours now, onto our knees and our wrists, and spreading through the fingers nice and wide, noticing how they feel today. And spread through the thumb and the little finger. Now, if you've got anything that's like carpal tunnel, you may want to bring some padding underneath the hand here to reduce the angle. Flatten the top of the feet. Notice where the knees are positioned underneath the hip points. And we're going to come into our cat-cow. So dropping the top of the head, bring yourself into flexion as we were when we were seated, allowing for the crown of the head to drop. As we inhale, we come through neutral, unfurling the spine. Exhale, allow for the roll of the breastbone to move forwards. Inhale, come through your neutral and move on the ebb and flow of the breath. So we're exhaling to allow for the diaphragm to move upwards, to allow for the spine to unfurl, and inhale into your neutral before exhaling into extension. If you find that you come into extension, you automatically lift the chin, just drop that in and lengthen the neck. So we've got this lovely flowing cat-cow movement, which is nice and slow, bit of mindful movement, noticing what it feels like you're moving in energetically today. Does it feel like you're moving through air, water? Maybe there's a sense of sludgy energy. Maybe you're moving through mud today. And just notice that, without any sense of idealism or better and worse. And then come back into your flat back, imagining that someone's pulling a rope from the crown of your head to the tailbone. So you've got this lovely long vertebra and spaces in between those vertebrae. Drawing the shoulder blades together, just notice how the wrists feel. So we've got this lovely contact with the ground, with the hands, which are really important. They act like feet, especially when we come into balances using the hands. I'd like you to spiral the fingers to the outer reaches of the mat, just to feel into the tiny muscles around the hands. And then we're going to spiral the fingers in towards the knees, and you can bring the hands closer to the knees, perhaps kneeling, just noticing which angle works for you. And we're not trying to create flexibility of the wrists here, we're just trying to open up and awaken these areas that can get congested with RSI. And then spiraling the fingers in towards the midline, rocking to and fro. And there may be one position that you prefer to move into. There may be one position you particularly don't like. Just notice your attachment to certain things, your reaction. And then flapping the hands upside down, fingers spread wide through the thumb here. And notice how this is in your wrist. We're going to be doing an additional wrist exercise other than this in a little while, so bear with me. And then flapping the hands back to your neutral. Just notice if there's a change in how the fingers and palms spread. Is there a change in the way that you ground here? So we're going to take the drishti down to the mat to keep the neck long. thinking about our sense of support around the abdominal region, which is very much connected to the position of the pelvis. We're going to come into our bird dog. So extending the right arm out in front of us like we have a wing attached to our shoulder blade, we're then going to move the opposing leg out into bird dog, spreading through the base of the big toe and spiraling through the middle finger. Try and adjust your weight. Notice when you're leaning into that wrist unnecessarily, there will be a lot of weight going in there, but see if you can adjust the position. Then with your gaze down in front of where your hands are, bring the limbs back in and extend and explore the other side. Reaching up through middle finger, base of the big toe, gazing down at the mat. Breathing to find support here. Now, if you're feeling anything in the lower back, think about the tailbone drawing down towards the mat. Change the position of the pelvis and then bring the hands back down. Now, you can keep flowing with that, or you have the option of bringing an extra element in. Extending out with an inhalation, we're going to exhale the elbow and the knee together with a flexion in the spine. Inhale, reaching. Exhale, elbow to knee. Inhale, extending. Exhale, drawing knee and elbow together. Flowing with the breath here. Exhaling, so we're doing 5 on this side. Holding the flexion and dropping the limbs back down to come to the other side, making any adjustments that you need to before reaching out through the left arm and the right leg. Inhaling to reach and exhale, draw the limbs inward into a flexion of the spine. Inhale, reaching, awakening the fingers and the toes. Exhale, tucking yourself inwards. Inhale, really noticing your center point here, your navel, as you radiate on the inhalation. And as you contract like a single organism on the exhalation. And when you come to your 5th, you can hold that exhalation to the end of the exhale and drop the limbs down with a sense of containment. So we're extending now the left leg out behind us. I'll just move the zafu because it's in the way. Extending the left leg out, spreading down through the feet and the heel. We're going to swivel the bent knee out to the outer edge and then come onto the inner line of the foot. So you'll notice we're in a side angle here. This is one of the positions we're going to use for side plank. Notice where your hand is positioned and change the alignment if it's behind the knee. So you've got everything stacked in a line. Reaching up with that hand up to the ceiling. Feel that lovely long line along the side body. Great. Now finding that base of support, we're going to inhale and lift with the side body into our gate. And you may feel this along the inner groin, perhaps depending on the position you're in. We're going to exhale, coming into a side angle, spiraling the heart and the breastbone up towards the ceiling, feeling that line down from the knee up to the hip, the armpit and the middle finger. We're then going to swoop ourselves back down and inhale ourselves back up. Floating between these points, really paying attention to what's occurring, and we'll hold the position over the straightened leg, exploring the side angle here, the lateral seam, feeling that sense of fire and combustion and digestive fire around the navel or solar plexus. Lovely. We're then going to spiral the hands back down, bring that foot in and bring in the other side. So we're coming to the other side now. So extending out through the through the right, spiraling the knee and the foot out to the left. And then make that hand so it's in line with the knee and the foot. And bring that arm up overhead, feeling that lovely long line. Remembering that we can come here for our side plank as an option. With a sense of support through the legs, we're going to lift and reach up through the arms. Windmilling over to the straightened leg, spiraling the breastbone up towards the ceiling. And then exhale, flowing between these points. Again, noticing what you feel like you're moving through today. Are you moving through air? Is there a sense of it being like water? Or does it feel like you're moving through mud? And that's all dependent on where our energy is. And that changes from day to day, month to month, cycle to cycle. Feeling the straightened arm, leaning against that straightened leg, spiraling towards the ceiling. Feeling that lovely long line from knee to hip, to armpit, to middle finger. Breathing, utilizing the breath before we spiral back down and through, swiveling the foot in and drawing the knee in towards. So we're going to just drop ourselves back in kneeling. If you're comfortable in kneeling, you can always bring a brick or a block and pop it underneath the pelvis. I'm not going to be here too long, but you don't want to focus on your legs and your hips and your spine. We're going to bring the hands into Anjali Mudra as low as you can take your wrists. So find that position. So we're going to be working with the strengthening of the hands. I don't know if you can see this, but I'm tilting the hand like a clock away from the midline, one side, and away from the midline, the other side. So this is quite strengthening on the tendons at the top of the hand. So you can see I'm moving one hand away and the other. You may want to keep the hands lower if it's not necessarily feeling like anything. We are strengthening the wrists here. Breathing the hands apart. So I find this incredibly hard, and this is going to vary from person to person, but it's definitely a strengthening exercise and going to be really useful to us today. So with that sense of the hands, you may want to flip them upside down, feeling into the opposing side of the wrists and working between those points before we come into our plank. So as we move into plank, let's swivel back onto our hands and knees, extend out one leg with the pelvis very much fixed, and extend out the other leg. Now you can move between these 2 points. Extra strengthening involved, spreading through the hands. So you've got that lovely Hasta Bandha, that protective wrist energy coming in. Now, if you're happy in plank, remember to breathe into your bellies, maybe lifting the hips up slightly for a sense of containment, working into this lovely space. Now, I'd like you to bring the feet together to make a 1 foot type position. Of course, bring your feet down as soon as you notice that your breath is being held and it's becoming too effortful. So bring the feet together. We're now going to bring the right hand in front of the face and roll onto the sides of the feet. We're coming into a side plank. This, of course, is optional. To have the knee down and explore where we were before prevents so much weight going into that wrist. Otherwise, if you come into your side plank, you're rocking onto the side of the feet, thinking about a straight Tadasana in a side angle. Imagining that you're completely solid and you just collapse to the side, but you've caught yourself with your hand, which of course you haven't. Now, if you want to take this further, I don't know if you will want to take this further, you can lift up the leg and explore how that feels. Lifting up the leg, the strength that's involved. And then swivel yourself back down and through, take the knees in, come into your Balasana, release the wrists. So when you're in your Balasana, you can flip the hands upside down, exploring how that feels in the shoulders. And extend the arms out, bringing the arms into Anjali, bring the hands together in prayer, keep the elbows in close, and you might be able to drop the hands onto the back of the head. So exploring how that is, how that feels, wherever your arms will go. Bringing the hands back, give yourself an opportunity to release and surrender after a certain amount of effort. And then bring yourself back up, spreading through the hands wide. Make sure you make any adjustments with the hands that you need to, and take this at your own pace. We're going to extend out through the legs, coming into plank, bringing the 2 feet together to make a 1 foot. So you can work in and out of that with the knees. Then we're going to bring the left hand under the face and roll onto the side of the feet. When you're very straight here in your side plank, you can keep the knee down, of course, as we did before. And if you're exploring your strength, lifting up the foot, you've got many, many different modifications and places to work with here. Exploring how that feels in the side body. And rolling back down with a sense of control, bringing the knees back in, come down into your tiny little balasana. Your child's pose, either bringing the ground up to meet your forehead or bringing the forehead down. Release and let go of your breath. Release and let go of the effort. Coming into a sense of sthira and sukham, stability and ease. So we're going to tuck the toes under now, reaching out with the hands and lift up through the legs to come into downward dog. Spiraling the wrists out, so the fingers are about 30 degrees to the outer edge of the mat. Keeping the knees bent, you can explore how to straighten your spine. Maybe inhaling to lift the heels, exhaling to drop the heels. Moving between any elements that feel useful to you. And you may want to work with that. Otherwise, we're coming into three-legged dog, lifting up through the right leg, keeping the pelvis positioned in a square sort of position. We're then going to bend the knee and explore dropping the heel over to come into scorpion. You're stacking the hips now. So that awareness is really helpful for what we'll be moving into. We're going to exhale the knee towards the nose. Inhale, leg away. Exhale, knee to elbow, same side. Inhale, you might want force exhalations through your nostrils here. Exhale across midline of the body. Inhale. Exhale, draw that foot into the front. Use your hand to bring yourself forwards. Drop the back leg, flatten the foot and come into your low lunge. Coming into low lunge to open the iliopsoas, lengthen at the front of the hip points, sinking down into that space. And you may want to rock back onto the heel to feel into the hamstrings. Before we come forwards, take the weight into the hands. You can come through tabletop to bring yourself back into your downward dog. You may want to work with downward dog here, or come into three-legged dog, keeping the hips stacked. We're then going to bend the foot to drop over to the other side to stack the hips to come into scorpion, bringing the gaze under the armpit. Exhaling, drawing the knee in towards the nose. Inhaling, just working wherever you are within the space that you're in. Exhale to elbow. Inhale, exhale across the body. Inhale. And exhale, aiming that foot to come to the framing of the hands at the front of the mat. Dropping the knee and resting the top of the foot down to come into your low lunge. Releasing the hips and into the front of the hip flexor along here, that iliopsoas. Rocking into your half Hanuman, drawing the toes up towards the ceiling to feel into the hamstrings. And then come forwards into your low lunge. From this position, we have various ways in to go down to our prone, into our crocodile. So we can either scoop the leg back, knees, chest, chin, like this to come down, or you come back into your plank via downward dog, bending the elbows, scoop yourself forwards, coming into crocodile. Probably the favorite place to come into for me anyway. Lengthening along the front of the legs and creating a little cushion with our arms. So we rest the cheek down, wiggle the hips to remind the body to release and let go, and then swap the gaze to the other side to release the cheeks down. So we're going to come into locust, which is great for our back muscles and our posture, and then we're going to explore bow. So release and let go, and then we're going to bring the hands alongside the hip points and think about a sense of someone pulling and lengthening from the breastbone and pulling and lengthening from the heels of our feet. And with that sense of lengthening, with the gaze dropping down at the mat, we lift into locust with a sense of contraction along the back body as the front body lengthens. Now you can do this with simply the front body or the back body and then come into locust, or you can come into a cobra with the legs down feeling into that. Keep that chin tucked in. Breathing into the navel, into the belly, into our center, that center of fire, determination and will. And release, bringing the hands back down into our little cushion. Wiggle the hips, release and let go. Lovely. So you may want to come into locust again, or we're going to come into bow. So firstly, can you bend at the knee? Now, whether you can bend at the knee is dependent on the quads, but more dependent on the lengthening that takes place along the hip flexor. So you may be able to do that. You may just want to explore that. Otherwise, bring the hand to the ankle. See how that changes things. Really paying attention to what the body is telling us, so we're not forcing anything. And then kick the foot out to come into a spinal extension. So the foot is directing behind, and there's a simple lift. So it's a pulley system. So you're pulling this thoracic into extension. If you're finding that it's tweaking in the lumbar, it's because the thoracic is rigid, and you'll want to work gently with the upper spine, not so much the lower spine. The lumbar is a vulnerable area. It's a secondary curve, and that's why it tends to have problems. So we're going to release the foot away, come back, wiggle the hips, release the effort within the muscles, and then bend the other side. Now again, just notice how that feels. You can spiral into the ankles, that can be helpful. Notice how the knees feel. Now, if the knees are twinging, you don't want to get hold of the ankle, you'll just want to work with the bending of the knee action. And if you're happy to do so, you can kick the leg away, lifting up through. And it's a pulley response. And I love that fact about yoga often is it's like one thing actions and then the rest follows. Gazing down at the mat, dropping and releasing. Wiggle the hips. Now option, if you've got twingy lumbars, to come back into child's pose, especially with the knees together, allowing for an opening to take place. So when we get contracted around the back of the spine here, which is very, very common, especially against L1 and S5, we want to breathe and open that side of our spine before coming back to Tribalasana, or bow rather. It's not Balasana, with both legs. Now this is only if one side and the other side felt okay individually. Now firstly, can you bring the legs in towards the buttocks? If you can you bring the feet into dorsiflexion and kick away? And with that, you get the lift, gazing down at the mat. And if you're breathing into your belly, there may be a rocking where the diaphragm moves. Wherever you are with this, just notice how your breath feels and draw attention to the whole body. Now we're going to release the legs away, bring the hands underneath the shoulders and tuck back into downward dog through Balasana, taking the toes under, lifting up through the hips. Just for a moment, touching base with a symmetrical space where the flexion of the lumbar can take place. Again, that's quite helpful if you straighten the knees. Maybe you can bring the lumbar into a flexion and that can adjust any twinginess. We're going to pad the feet towards the hands, coming into Uttanasana, forward fold, bending the knees. If you've got high or low blood pressure, you want to dangle up and unfurl. Otherwise, bend the knees as much as you can to flip the hands upside down under the feet, rocking forwards and backwards, giving the hands a massage. Keep the crown of the head relaxed. I'm looking at the screen, so I've constantly got my neck working. So don't do as I do as I say. Release the crown. And then bringing the hands to elbows, unfurl into Tadasana, keeping the vertebra stacking up one by one, with the last thing to come up being the head. As we come into our Tadasana, just make any adjustments that you need to as I adjust my screen, noticing how the feet make contact with the ground. And you may want to bring the feet together or have them apart. We're going to inhale the arms up overhead, clasping the left wrist with the right hand. And then we're going to tilt over to the side. Breathe breathing into this lateral extension. Inhale. We're going to get hold now of the right wrist with the left hand. Maybe forced exhalation through nostrils. Inhaling, back up to the middle and release down. So from this position that we're in here, at the front of the mat, we're going to lift up through the right leg and step back into Virabhadrasana 1. So it's quite an easy step back, so we're not overextending ourselves. You want to feel like that front knee is integral to the strength that you're in, the position you're in. Now with Virabhadrasana 1, you can have the heel off the ground, or you can swivel the heel down to about a 45-degree angle. But I want you to feel like the hip points are like headlamps and they're moving forwards. And for this stance, we want extra support because we're going to be really going for it. So with the arms parallel, just notice how that is around the shoulders and the neck. We're going to be doing some forced exhalations, pumping the arms. Okay, so we're going to do 10 of these. Notice how this makes you feel. We're allowing for energy to move around this area, okay, around the breast tissue. Inhaling, exhale. Inhale, forced exhalation. Inhale. Once you've done 10, allow for you to notice how that felt. You can come into another 10 because it can feel really satisfying. Or we're going to hold this for a moment and draw that knee forwards to reposition the legs now to Virabhadrasana 2. So this time the foot comes out further. Make sure that knee is directly in line with the front foot. The pelvis is not front facing anymore. It's to the side. And we come into our Virabhadrasana 1 by bringing the arms over the front leg and the back leg. Okay, so you've got this lovely neutral position. You're a warrior 2, the sense of softness. And you can imagine someone's pulling you to and fro over the back leg and over the front leg. And you find that middle ground. Just notice what the knee's doing. And then we're going to come into humble warrior, stroking that hand along the back leg and lifting up through the arm. Make sure that front knee doesn't want to straighten because it will want to. Keep it bent. Expanding up towards the ceiling, relaxing the shoulders. Lovely. And then bring yourself back into your Virabhadrasana 2, warrior 2. Now from this position, get hold of your bricks and blocks. You may need to move the legs. And we're going to bring them in front of us. If you've got 2, use 2. It's not going to hurt. Now from this position, we're going to take the weight into the left leg. And this is exploration about balance. And these balancing poses are really good for strengthening the ankles. It's not all about getting into the full posture. Make sure you've got that sense of something to reach for. You can also use a chair. So it's really good to have that so it's kind of accessible. So we're going to take the weight into that front leg and think about a stacking with the hips as we move into half moon, which involves a stacking of the hips and a stacking of the shoulders. Now it may be the case that you're working with just lifting the back foot and finding the brick. And it's okay if you don't find the brick and you're just lifting the foot and working with balance. All these balancing postures are really good wherever you end up. If you've ended up in your Ardha Chandrasana, you can explore bringing the drishti up towards the ceiling. I won't be doing that tonight. And just feel into how it feels to flex the foot. The foot is really crucial to this. And then bring yourself back down. Take that foot to the front into your Tadasana. And then step back into Virabhadrasana 1 on this side. So left leg comes back. Taking that position, either heel up, heel down. We've now got the hip points, head lamping to the front of the mat. Wherever you are, you know where you're coming to with the arms in front of you. So you're not reaching, but you're drawing the shoulder blades back. We're going to come into our pumping action, 10 of these with a forced exhalation. Ready? When you stop, notice how that makes you feel. Draw that knee in towards the front and then take yourself into Virabhadrasana 2. So this time the hips move to the side. You still want that front knee to be really integral to the position. The arms come out to the side, pulling forwards and backwards. Someone's doing a tug of war with your arms. Over to one side, over to the other side, and coming into your neutral space. From here, we're coming into humble warrior, lifting up through the side body, gazing towards the armpit. Give yourself a smell and experience how this feels with a bent knee before spiraling back through Virabhadrasana 2. Now you know you're coming to Ardha Chandrasana. You want to think about where you're going to. You're taking the weight into that front leg. Take the weight as you pivot into Ardha Chandrasana, stacking the hips, spreading through the toes, and don't worry about your balance. And you can come out hopefully with a sense of control. If you fall down, don't worry. Make sure you fall down with a sense of relaxation, so you're floppy. And then extending through the base of the foot. And wherever you are, you're playing with your sense of balance and your proprioception in space. The more that you do this, the more you increase the mapping and the neuroception, those synapses firing away to make this possible. So these are really key things to do in terms of movement. Lovely. So coming back through this position, we're going to draw that foot forwards, coming into our standing position. Now from here, we're going to come down onto our sit bones. So let's take ourselves up onto our toes, bend the knees, sink down. Listen to my knees crack. And then come down onto the sit bones. Give yourself a hug. You may want to work with your balance here or come into Navasana with the knees bent, feet flared, and with an exhalation, draw the knees in. Inhale, straighten. Exhale, draw the knees in. Working between those points. And then drop the knees. Find a lovely base of support. I'm going to bring the wrists behind us. How do the wrists feel now? As you bring the fingers directing towards the buttocks. And you can try the fingers moving away, but bring the fingers back. Now, if that feels really strong, we want to just work with this aspect. We're now going to take our mind into our pelvis with a sense of support and lift up into upward facing tabletop. See if the front of the shoulders will allow for this action. So the weight of the pelvis is, well, it's fairly heavy. So you'll notice there's a certain amount of strength involved. There's a lot going on here. And then draw yourself down by rocking onto the heels, bringing the legs apart, allow for a flexion, relax forwards. Lovely. Now you can either try that one again, or we're going to try the one which is an upward facing plank. For comparison, so straightening the legs, bring the hands behind. Now I teach this with feet flex because it's anatomically better. If you do Ashtanga, they do it with the feet, the toes pointed, which is not very clever, to be honest. You can choose to make things harder for yourself by pointing the toes if you like. So we're going to lift up through the hips, gazing down at the feet, pointing the toes if you really want to, or flexing the toes and noticing how much better that is. Breathing and releasing. Coming into a Paschimottanasana, so you allow for the spine to unfurl with that lovely flexion to release. So these counter poses are so crucial to our yoga practice. We just do extension, extension, extension. It's going to create problems. So you need that sense of balance in between the spaces. Lovely. And we're going to unfurl up now and come down onto our backs in a 2-foot support. Udvi Padapithan. Bring the spine down. Notice how the solar plexus feels. So with the feet hip width apart, we're going to imagine that the knees are drawing away here with the hands alongside the body, and we're rolling up through the vertebra. So it's not a dissimilar action, is it, from what we were doing? Rolling through those vertebrae one by one. Breathing in and exhaling freely. Now this time we're going to change this slightly. We're going to bring the hands stack on top of the crown of the head. And as you have the pelvis down, we're going to lift up the gaze. So you'll notice there's quite a lot of strengthening taking place in this session today. And that's because we're focusing on that energy center. Now, as you roll up through the spine, you allow for the head to drop. And then you allow for everything to roll back down and you bring the chin up. Okay, really notice how this feels. And we're going to take the breath into it. So inhaling, hips come up. Exhale, rolling down. Sense of contraction around the abdominis rectus. Let's do that a few more times. Unfurling on the inhalation. Exhaling, contracting. And then let's drop the head and release the hands. Now you have the option to roll along the spine and come into an inversion, or you can come straight into Shavasana, or you can come into Nadi Shodhana. So I'm going to show you the rolling along the spine. Now, let's play with pose of tranquility. There is an option, of course, of legs up the wall or legs on the bolster for waterfall. If you're happy to roll, it's always lovely to go into pose of tranquility. Contraindications here are migraine, glaucoma, high blood pressure. You're coming into a soft space. Now, if you want something gentler, come into Viparita Karini with the legs up towards the ceiling. You can utilize a sofa, or you can bring a bolster underneath your hips. And I have one here. So if you come onto the bolster, you can come into waterfall. Now my bolster doesn't seem very flat, so I'm lopsided, but you get the idea. Coming into an inversion that's suitable for you, or you can come straight into Shavasana, or you can come into Nadi Shodhana. So I'm just going to take a look at everyone. You have lots of options if you want to come into a pranayama with the alternate nostril breathing. That's a really good prep for nighttime, for bedtime. And if you do find that it's difficult to relax and calm the nervous system before bedtime, you just simply breathe through the left nostril, connected with the moon. That is said to help calm the mind. Whereas if you breathe through the right nostril, that's connected with the sun, it's an energizing breath. That's known as Surya Vedana. So you want to focus on breathing through the left nostril. If you're in your inversion, you might want to think about unraveling through the spine. If you're in Viparita Karini, stay there for a little bit longer before you come into Shavasana. Give yourself time to ease yourself out with no rush at all. Making any adjustments that you need to. Any support behind the knees as you come into your corpse pose. Making adjustments for the neck and the head. Creating some support under the head, maybe cushion, folded blanket, just to lift the chin and change the position of the head. You need to bring the legs over one side to the other and windscreen the spine a little. Please do. And of course, you can bring your blanket over your body because your body temperature may decrease even after a short period of relaxation. And bring your attention to Manipura, lustrous gem, the solar plexus, the area of will, digestion, determination, the center of our being that connects the lower chakras of energy chakras. So if you choose to think about this system, these chakras or energy centers are connected with development stages like Piaget. So you've got the root chakra, the chakra within the watery pelvis. You've got the lower chakras, the energy rising to chakra 3 here, and you've got the higher chakras, and they culminate in chakra 3, Manipura, and burst forth. And of course, we want all of those elements to be in balance. Above Manipura, we have the center of compassion, situated around the breastbone and in front of the shoulder blades. You have the center of speaking your own truth, situated around the throat. You've got the center of intuition around the forehead, the third eye, and the center of higher consciousness at the crown, Sahasrara. Just notice how this area feels to you. This area is as emotionally complex, perhaps, as the pelvis and the root. And we are taught often to hold ourselves in around the waist. And that kind of cultural conditioning, and I'm falling for it, I'm wearing tie leggings around my waist, that prevents us from being able to be healthy. Because when we hold and rigidify and brace ourselves in those positions, and we've probably all been there trying to minimize our waists, you prevent the diaphragm from moving down, you create anxiety and patterns of restriction within your breath. And that diaphragm is designed to massage the heart and the lung, the liver. So if you don't have this action taking place, those organs don't get the massage they need to stay healthy. So whatever this area feels to you, there is no right or wrong answer, just noticing how you feel without judgment and not adding anything to what you're currently experiencing. And I'm just going to offer you the idea. I don't think this is a universal concept. There's no specific person's quote, but it's very apt when you're dealing with yoga, mindfulness and meditation and anything to do with the mind stuff, anything to do with neuroception. Where the mind goes, the energy flows. So where you set your mind, the intention that you set yourself, and that can be where the mind goes, can be negative as well as positive, the energy flows. So there is a great importance in where we choose to place our energies, because that's where the energy will flow to. Just allowing the body to surrender. Surrender being as important as a sense of will and determination. And as you begin to bring your attention back into the body, wherever it's drifted, I want to begin to bring some movement into the fingers and the toes. And then at the end of the following sound coming from the singing bowl, in your own time, do you roll over into a fetal position, making yourself comfortable. And again, at the end of the following sound, you ground yourself down through your arms and come into an easy upright position, giving yourself the time to settle. and then to close the practice, either bringing the arms up above the head or bringing the hands to the eye sockets. Draw the hands in through the midline, bowing in acknowledgement of one another in the space in between. Namaste.